Hello and welcome to the Crone Zone. I'm Lynn, and this morning we're going to be looking at card 12 from the Major Arcana, and that is the Hanged Man. And as we've seen previously, where we've been looking at some of the higher numbers of the majors, the numbers reduce to an association with a number under 10. And in this case, it's the number 3. So we're going to be looking at the family of threes. And of course, we were first introduced to the threes with the Empress. So we will need her from the deck as well as the threes from the minors. So that's 3 of swords, wands, cups, and pentacles. They will be useful to refer back to. But we're not done with that. There's a further card that reduces to 3, and that is the very final card in the Major Arcana, the World. Card 21. 2 and 1 equal 3. So you will also need that from the deck, please. So take a moment to take those out. And then it's time for us to look at the Hangman in a little more detail. Like many cards that are not understood properly, or many things that we don't understand, they can appear even a little alarming to begin with. And the Hangman is one of those cards that when it comes up in a reading, people can think, oh gosh, I don't like the look of that. What's that about? So let's find out. Let's take a closer look then at card 12, the Hanged Man. The first thing to note is that this is not an image of a gallows, and nor is the figure being hanged in the sense of execution. Rather, he is suspended by one foot, and this reminds me of a high wire performer, a trapeze artist, if you like, who will maybe loop a rope around a foot and then adopt a position not dissimilar from the one we see here in the card. And like the high wire performer, there is no sense of unease in the position of the inverted figure. Quite the opposite, he appears relaxed, even comfortable. I would like to draw attention to the combination of colours. The legs of the figure are clad in red tights, and this is a colour of dynamism and fertility and growth. The tunic is the watery blue of intuition. And one of the parts of the costume of the figure that I like the most are the golden slippers that he's wearing, and I will come back to those later. The arms of the figure are placed behind the body, whereas we would expect them to be positioned to the side or in front. Interestingly too, in this card, there is nothing in the view at all except for the tree and the figure. That's really significant. This is a deep dive here, and it's not concerned with externals. And also note, the head is surrounded by a bright halo. That light bulb that's come on, that enlightenment is happening. In Norse mythology, Odin was suspended from Yggdrasil, the world tree, in order to gain wisdom. This was a voluntary thing that he did on his part, and he was suspended there for 9 days and 9 nights. However, it was only when he sacrificed an eye that he had insight into the magic alphabet of the runes. There are many myths from other cultures too of people undergoing sacrifices of varying sorts in order to gain inner wisdom. We think of the Sioux Indian vow to the sun. It's a core part of much shamanic training, this notion of willing sacrifice and a descent into the underworld to gain insight. And we notice in the myth of Odin, it's when Odin loses an eye, his external vision, his worldly vision, that he can see inwardly into the heart of things. When the hanged man shows up for us in a reading, of course, we may not be undergoing some huge sacrificial shamanic journey. We may, but much more likely we're going to be experiencing more everyday things. So what would the card mean? Well, there's no way in videos like this to exhaust all the meaning of major arcana cards. There really isn't. But we can pick up on some key aspects that we could expect. One of these is that this is a time when it's not possible to know outcomes. You are suspended. You're a little bit in no man's land. Answers will not be given to you. You have to wait. You have to just be patient and wait. And the surrender you make is surrendering to the fact that you cannot know at this point in time, and you cannot act at this point in time. All you can do at this point is to be suspended and to wait. And hopefully during that waiting, some inspiration will come to you, some insight will come to you. But you must give in, and you must give in with grace, because you're just not going to go anywhere until this phase has passed. Now, we can also see that the intellect isn't really going to help us here. It's been turned on its head. All we can do is give in and wait. On a more workaday level, phrases like go with the flow, swing loose, hang in the breeze, those are the kind of phrases that might come to mind. Okay, so those are the kind of messages that we're getting from the hanged man. And I can't leave this little section without also adding that often when the hanged man appears in a reading, he's asking you to see things from a different point of view. What about if you just turn that mindset on its head and look at this from a completely different perspective? So it can be an invite to do exactly that. Turn things around. See it a completely different way. The Empress and the other threes are linked to the idea of growth in all its manifestations. And there is within that too the idea of physical gestation, of pregnancy. The Empress is pregnant. And this in itself is a time of waiting, a time of suspension, whilst new life grows within. And we can draw useful parallels here with the hanged man. Even that number 9, and the time that Odin is suspended from the tree of the world tree, resonates with the 9 months of pregnancy and that time of gestation. The Empress card, however, is visually rich. We see abundant nature. It's very connected to manifestation. And that type of growth. Whereas the growth in the hanged man is interior. This card is empty except for the tree and the suspended figure. Looking at the 3s in the minor suits, it's possible to identify in the 3 of Swords the notion of sacrifice. In that card, the heart was pierced by the intellect. With the hanged man, the limits of mind have been reached. It is the intellect, with its great desire to know, which is sacrificed into the trust of not knowing, of surrendering. Coming to the Three of Wands, that figure is inverted with the Hanged Man. And the wands are now the tree from which he is suspended. The appraising, viewing and assessing, planning is not helpful at all at the Hanged Man stage. All those worldly views are literally turned on their head. Now, the Three of Cups with its dancing figures I should like to return to. It's an important part of this story, as we shall see. So looking at the Three of Pentacles now, well, this is a fractal of the complete manifestation we will come to when we consider the World card, also a 3 and part of the story here. So now I'd like to say a little about the World card. Straight off the bat then, the figures in the four corners are those fixed energies, those fixed energies, the portals for the fixed energies of the elements. So that is of air with the human figure, of water with the eagle, of earth with the bull, and of fire with the lion. So those are the elements that we're working with here on this plane. Now, interestingly, when we came across these on the Wheel of Fortune, they were angelic, they were winged. They're no longer winged. They've come down to earth, they've landed, they're embodied, they are manifesting. And I'd like to take you right back to the Magician's Table, which is one of the first things we ever looked at in this series. And the tools of the wand, the cups, the pentacles and the swords which lay on his table. Because this is the end of this cycle. Not the end of the journey. That's something else. This is the end of this cycle through. And clearly, the magician, we have used those tools and we have manifested something. We've actually brought it to conclusion. This is the end of the cycle. Look at the freedom of the dancing figure, the naked dancing figure. No need for any kind of trappings or worldly trappings. This is spirit dancing in matter and expressing itself, being able to manifest. I'd also like to look at the wreath that the figure is dancing inside. Now, obviously, circular things represent a sense of completion. We're also thinking of the laurels of victory, which we saw first in the Six of Wands, on the head of the figure who was riding the horse, that victory. But here, the victory, well, the completion, the success is far greater because it's all-encompassing. The figure is actually within the wreath. But also, it's not a circle, is it? It's an oval. And it's reminiscent of the Vesica Pisces, of the birth canal. Because this is an ending, but this figure is going to be born into a new cycle. It's going to just dance through and begin again. So when we see the World card in a reading, a cycle is ended. It's brought to successful completion. We can celebrate that. We can be pleased with that. We can have a sense of satisfaction. We can enjoy this moment before we move forward. So very positive in that sense. And notice that the two wands that the figure holds in either hand are equally balanced. The left and the right, the intuition and the logical side of the brain are in perfect balance. Let's continue with the theme of the dance here, which began with the three dancing figures in the celebratory Three of Cups. If we look now at the legs of the suspended figure of the hanged man and rotate the figure 360 degrees, we see that the posture is actually that of the dancing figure in the World card. Earlier, I mentioned the golden slippers the hanged man wears. They are the colour of the golden cups in the Three of Cups card, and also of that golden enlightenment surrounding the head of the suspended figure. And I think the message here is that, having surrendered to his experience and put his trust in the greater universe, the hanged man is able to bring the gold dust of enlightenment right down to the ground, to the earth, where his feet will dance. The 3 is about growth. So what is the growth that we experience with the hanged man? Well, it's the growth that comes from knowing we have reached our limits and in surrendering to that fact with grace. The planet associated with the hanged man is Neptune. And Neptune is out of time. It rules the timeless, transpersonal, boundaryless world beyond ego, beyond separation. And it's a little into that deep, deep well that we must plunge with the hanged man. So we have this experience, and we must take some knowledge of it back to our everyday life. We must retain that and take it back with us. Take the gold slippers into the world, if you like. Because, of course, we cannot function in a transpersonal, timeless way for any length of time here. That's just not going to work. But we retain something of that experience. So, the hanged man knows so much more now. He can work in a balanced way with those 4 elements and bring things to a wonderful fruition, to completion. And he has learned, as Van Morrison sings, that you pull no punches, but you don't push the river. This is the Tao of the tarot. And I think it's rather delightful that we end with this dance. We end with this dancing figure. And I'd like to end this video by referencing Alan Watts and something he says, because we can think this is the end of the journey. And Alan Watts says the end of the journey isn't the point. He says life isn't like a journey. Life is playful. It's like music. And the whole point is to sing and dance along. I'll leave you with that delightful thought. Okay, goodbye.